Well, as I always say, it's a fantastic one, and that's classic, but it really is. Today we have somebody that really I've thought about having on the show many times, and we finally connected. So I'm really excited. She played the wife, Ellen, on Gentle Ben. She has been on multiple shows. She has worked with various stars, and so I'd like to welcome Beth Brickell to That's Classic. Beth, nice to have you on.
Thank you very much.
Well, it's a total pleasure. So I'll tell you what, just to start off right away, what I did a lot of research on you and stuff like that, but what was your initial audition like for Gentle Ben? I didn't see anything about that.
There were five of us who had a screen test. And when I got there, the scene was with the little boy, Clint Howard, who was only 7 years old at that time.
Wow.
I wanted to get on the floor with him so I could be more intimate. And the cinematographer put what he called a hi-hat on the floor so that I could be on the floor and he could still shoot up at our faces. And years later, I got the role. And years later at a party, I was talking to Ellen Burstyn, and she told me she was one of the other five who auditioned for Ellen Wedlow.
Oh my gosh. And I mean, you're a great actress. She's a great actress. That's phenomenal. Did
Well,
you do you know who the other three were by chance? Any of them?
no, I had no idea who anybody was. And I had only been in Los Angeles 7 months at that point. I had just come out from New York, where I studied with Sandy Meisner and Lee Strasberg. And my big goal in New York was to become a member of the Actors Studio. And a month after I passed that audition, I was in Hollywood.
Wow. I mean, first of all, that's a huge accomplishment to get into the actor's studio. And then a month later, you're here and here you are, going up for a series regular. That's phenomenal. What do you remember about that moment of with Clint on the floor? Like, what was he like? And what do you remember? Was it, about that?
Of course, I got to know Clint so well later on when we did the show. I'm trying to think back to the actual audition.
Sure.
He was just a little fella, 7 years old, but he was right there with me. He Clint was a brilliant natural talent
Hmm.
and a wonderful little person. No issues, no, just loving and eager and enthusiastic. I adored him. But anyway, the audition, I said, now I'm going to be right here with you and we'll talk together. And we just talked the scene.
Wow.
And but I had a wonderful agent. I have to give him credit too. He was my William Morris agent and my responsible agent. When I was in New York, Roland Perkins was his name. And Roland came to New York, and I had become a client of the William Morris Agency in New York.
Wow.
And Roland was head of the television division in Los Angeles. And he came to New York and interviewed, I guess, all the young clients. And he wrote a letter back. At that time, people wrote letters.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That time people actually knew how to write. Yeah.
What about in the dark ages? Anyway, he wrote a letter back that he thought they could get three guys and myself work in television if we would come to Los Angeles. And so my New York agent told me this, and I said, well, I have an audition coming up with the Actors Studio, and I can't go anywhere until after my audition because it was so important to me. It was
Yeah.
more important to me than working in the industry.
Wow.
I wanted to prove to myself that I had talent, because when I first went to New York, I didn't think I had any talent. I
Hmm.
was I was very humble, to say the least. And anyway, then Roland later told me that he told the producers of Gentle Ben that he was only going to submit Beth Brickell for the role of Ellen Wedlow. He wasn't going to submit any other clients from William Morris because I was the right person for the job. And they were worried that I looked too young. And Roland told me that he convinced them that I would make Dennis Weaver look younger if I were the wife. Anyway, I got the role.
Wow, wow. What, by the way, do you know what was the age difference between you and Dennis?
About 13 years.
I gotcha.
Not a whole lot, but you know, especially at that time, age was, it still is, it's an overriding consideration in Hollywood.
I would agree 100% with you on that, without a doubt. So you get did you get the role like after that initial audition with Clint, or was there a series of auditions that you had to go through?
No, not one screen test. That was it.
Wow, wow. And when you did it, did Clint already have the part, or were they also screen testing him?
Oh no, Clint was already cast, and I think Dennis was too. So they were just looking for the wife.
Wow. Did you realize when you went up for it that you'd be going to Florida to shoot this thing?
I don't remember if they had told me that or not, but that's where we shot it, in the Everglades in Miami, out from Miami.
And what was that like? Now I know that you originally are from Arkansas, but still Florida is a whole different, animal, so to speak. What was that like for you to go to, especially to the Everglades? What was that like for you?
Well, it was interesting. The location was great. There was a little wood frame house, which was our house. We did the exteriors and the interiors in our little house. And then right down from our house was a deck, and then the Everglades.
Mm-hmm.
And then there were a lot of woods around that area. And we shot a lot of our things in the woods. And I love nature. And I love animals. And we had this great relationship with these. We had 3 bears on the show. And 2 of them were 650 pounds. And what did we call them? I can't remember their names, but there was a young bear,
Mm-hmm.
and I do remember his name. Drum was his name. I have vivid memories of Drum. He was a younger bear, and if they had a scene where the bear had to either climb a tree or do something like that, they used Drum. And TV Guide came down to Miami to take photos of the cast, and they wanted a photo of me with Drum. And so Drum and I were cheek to cheek.
Oh my gosh.
Now, Drum, I didn't know this, but Drum, the trainers played with Drum by wrestling with him.
Oh.
And Drum and I were taking these photos cheek to cheek. And I turned to Drum and I said, Drum, let's do something more interesting. And he thought I was saying, let's wrestle. And I mean, just like that, I was on the ground with Drum on top of me, with his mouth in my neck, the back of my neck.
Oh, whoa.
I mean, it happened so quickly, but let me tell you the amazing thing. Drum sensed that I wasn't as strong as those trainers who wrestle with him. This is hard to believe, but I wasn't frightened at all because I could sense that he was being very careful with me. He did not put his full weight on me. He slobbered in my hair. But other than that, but the photographer of TV Guy everybody else was having a heart attack because the star of Gentle Ben was about to be eaten by the bear. And CBS would never let TV Guide print or use any of those photos with me on the ground with drum on top of me.
Oh my gosh. I have to admit, I would have been pretty scared. I mean, a bear is, I mean, you just don't know. That's wild.
Well, I'm telling you, it was so clear to me that he was being careful. That's the amazing part. Not amazing about me, amazing about the bear.
Yeah.
The bear having that kind of awareness and carefulness. But when I said, Drum must do something more interesting, that up on his hind legs, like just like that, well, down on the, he knew what that meant.
That
I didn't know what it meant.
That's really funny. Clint, yeah, I've had Clint on the show. I love him, fantastic. And he talked about the Bears and how close he really was with them for real, and how much fun that he had. Did you get a chance to go out on like I don't know I don't even know what those are called, those boats that go out on the
Airboat,
Everglades and that
airboat.
stuff?
Oh, sure. We all went on it. I even drove it on one scene.
Wow. Wow. How was that? Was that fun?
It was fun. It just skidded along the top of the Everglades. And now the first day that we filmed, they wanted some shots to introduce the series on air. So they wanted a shot with Dennis, Clint, and me and the bear on the airboat. Well, when they led the bear on, we three were already on the airboat. And when they led the 650-pound bear onto the airboat, the whole boat turned over into the Everglades.
Oh my gosh.
And talk about everyone frantic. Everyone was frantic, and Dennis went for Clint. He didn't know if Clint could swim or not. Save Clint. And I'm a swimmer, so I wasn't a problem. And then they got the bear out of the Everglades. So we had some interesting experiences.
Yeah, no kidding. Did you ever feel any danger, just because obviously you're in the Everglades, you got gators, you got snakes, you got everything. Did you ever have any sense of that at all?
Oh no, listen, they did scenes with me with the raccoon on my shoulder. We did my birthday show. Dennis and my husband and little boy buy me a backpack for my birthday. And I say, what's this all about? And they said, well, we have a surprise for you. And we went on a camping trip, and we went to this shack in the woods, and it was full of young bobcats.
Oh, wow.
And then the mother and the father bobcat came back. So we did an interesting show for my birthday. But we had a lot of experience with the animals, but I was never frightened of animals, never.
How interesting. That is amazing. So when you were, obviously you're shooting, what would you do offset, or, when you had days off, what would you do? What would you do? Like, how close were you to the set in that area?
Oh, Clint was in my lap when we went shooting. We had a great relationship. I loved him, and I loved Dennis. Dennis was a role model for me. Dennis was a unique human being, wonderful person. First of all, he was very spiritual. Dennis was a searcher, had been a searcher, and he began with Christian Science. But he wanted something more. He wanted to experience God. And he became a devotee of Yogananda's Self-Realization Fellowship. And Dennis meditated every morning before going on the set. And we started shooting at 8 a.m.
Wow.
He had to come in for makeup, but he meditated every morning. And when we got through with a 12-hour film day,
Wow.
he meditated again,
Hmm.
made Dennis just a wonderful, calm presence on the set. Everyone loved him and had a wonderful sense of humor. He made a joke about everything, but he was friendly to everybody. And I loved him. I loved him.
Wow. Were there, by the way, were there any pranks or anything like that that happened on the set ever?
Pranks. No, no pranks.
Yeah, I got you. Now I know that Clint Howard's dad, Rance, was there, and I know that he actually wrote it, and I think he actually directed possibly an episode too. But what did you have any kind of relationship with Rance?
Rance was competitive with me,
Really?
so we didn't have a good relationship.
Hmm.
Uh, when his character was in the storyline, mine was diminished and vice versa.
Hmm.
So he began writing scripts that left me out. And the producer didn't like me. I had a bad relationship. I think I wasn't deferential enough when I met George Sherman, our producer. He
Mhm.
never liked me. So he wanted Rance to write me out of the show. Yeah, that was an issue I had to deal with. And Dennis was always taking up for me with the producer.
Oh, is that great?
And so was the editor.
Hmm. Very interesting. And I know that Rance and Dennis knew each other way before they
From
were they
they
had been
were
in school together.
they were at the University of Oklahoma together.
Yeah, exactly. So that's interesting. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
But was there any jealousy there about the fact that you had that bond with Clint that you had?
I think there may have been an issue. Rance didn't seem to approve of how close Clint and I were. He never interfered, but I got this feeling that he had some feelings about that.
Yeah, yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I get you. I get you. Odd.
Talking a slight issue. We're not talking about a big problem.
I understand. I understand, but I appreciate your honesty. I love it. I love it. I think that's what it's all about. So, and you know what? The truth of the matter is there's nothing too shocking about that there might be issues. Welcome to Hollywood, you know? I mean, it happens.
It happens a lot in Hollywood.
Yeah. So how long would you shoot for when you would go? Was it for months or what was the how long were you there?
3 months, and then we would get off for a couple of months, and then we'd go back for 3 more months, back and forth to Los Angeles. Because, of course, Dennis had left his family in Los Angeles,
Hmm.
so he wasn't with his family. And Clint's mother was in Los Angeles with Ronnie.
Hmm.
Ronnie was doing the Andy Griffith show at that time. So that family was split up. So they would just keep us on set 3 months and then let us go back to LA and be with our family and our friends and come back.
Did Ron ever visit, by the way, while you guys were in Florida?
He did a couple of our shows as a little boy.
Oh, I don't remember that. Really?
Yeah, he did a couple of them.
What was that like having Ron and Clint there at the same time?
Well, they were brothers, so it was fun for everybody.
Oh, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. So what did you yeah, like, it's you've shot for the day. Did you just stay at a hotel, do your lines and come back, or did you have time on the weekends to enjoy the Everglades or that area at all?
Well, they put me up in a really nice apartment in Bal Harbor,
Hmm.
which is a nice area of Miami. I almost said Los Angeles, of Miami. And I think we shot 6 days a week. I can't remember. I think we did.
Mm-hmm.
So on Sundays, I was studying the next show, memorizing my lines. So I didn't do a lot of, but one thing that people kept telling me about, they pronounce it my name Brickell in Miami. Brickell Avenue is the boulevard in Miami. So I was taken to see Brickell Avenue. Today, it's the luxury of Miami, Brickell Avenue.
Wow.
In fact, years later, my dad had retired and he became very interested in genealogy. And he found out somehow about the Brickells in Miami, which had been the first pioneer family to found Miami. In fact, both Miami and Fort Lauderdale were platted and founded on their property.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
And my dad started corresponding with a historian, a very well-known historian in Florida, and found out that no book had ever been written about the Brickells, William and Mary Brickell. And he thought I should write a book about them. I had done research on an unsolved mystery in my hometown, the Maude Crawford disappearance. That's another story. And so my dad said, no book is ever written on Mary Brickell and William Brickell, and they were the most important, so on and so. So I went on vacation years, decades later. I'd never been to Key West. And I went through Miami to Key West. And I came back to Miami and I ended up staying 4 months investigating, researching who William and Mary Brickell were. And I wrote a book, the first book called William and Mary Brickell, Founders of Miami and Fort Lauderdale.
I mean, that's amazing. I mean, really, that's amazing. You actually went all the way to the point that you wrote the book.
Yes.
Wow, I'm impressed. I'm very impressed.
Well, William and Mary, I mean, anyone who looks at this interested in Florida should get my book, the second edition. There was a first edition and a second edition. I made some corrections and some additions. And so I then self-published the second edition. The first edition was published by a publisher in South Carolina. But then there's a second edition. Anyway, it's a fascinating, fascinating story of these. They had 6 children. And when they moved to the Miami, the mouth of the Miami River and the Biscayne Bay in 1871, there were 12 settlers between Palm Beach and Key West. 12.
Wow.
It was a wilderness. And they showed up with their 6 children, built a house, and the rest is history.
Wow, that's amazing. That is. Well, anybody out there, yeah, go find the book, please. It sounds quite interesting. Did by the way, so you're from Arkansas. Did you when did you decide, oh, I want to be an actress?
Well, when I was a teenager, like I guess most of us, I collected movie star photos. At that time, there was a photoplay magazine and a modern screen magazine with full color photos, full page photos of all the stars at that time.
Oh, yeah.
And I dreamed of being an actress, but I didn't tell anyone because they would laugh at me. I didn't mention it to anybody. And when I was a sophomore in college, I was on the campus of the University of Arkansas one afternoon, and these guys were, 6 or 7 guys were very upset. And I was kind of listening to what they were carrying on about. Oh no, not James Dean. James Dean's dead.
Oh, wow.
This is in September 1955.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, "Who is James Dean?" And one of the guys said, "What? You don't know who James Dean is? You have to go immediately downtown to the movie theater and see East of Eden."
Mm.
So I was curious enough. I went that very night by myself to see East of Eden. James Dean's performance affected me like no performance has ever affected me before or since. He was in the actor's studio. I didn't know anything at that time about the actor's studio, and Elia Kazan directed that movie,
Mm-hmm.
who everyone says, and is true, got the best performances always of every actor he ever worked with.
He was
What
great.
what he got from James Dean was so spontaneous and real and emotional. I was so affected that I decided that very night I want to become an actor and be able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
That was the night.
Wow. Wow. And how soon after that did you find yourself in New York?
Well, I graduated, I finished college. I majored in history and political science in case my dream was ridiculous,
Mm-hmm.
so that I could go into the Foreign Service or do some. I was also had some newspaper experience in summers. I worked 5 summers in high school and college in newspapers, so I had that background as well. But anyway, when I finished university and graduated, I applied and was accepted for a summer graduate program at the University of Edinburgh in Scotland.
Whoa.
And this seems hard to believe, hard for me to believe, but my idol was Grace Kelly.
Mm.
And the summer that I worked at the Shreveport Times, not the summer, I actually stayed out of college for a semester. And that spring is when she married Prince Rainier of Monaco.
Yeah.
And she had been my idol. And I read everything that was ever written about her that came over the teletype at the Shreveport Times. Everything was about Grace Kelly. Anyway, when I knew I was going to Europe, I wrote Grace Kelly a letter to the palace in Monaco.
Oh my gosh.
Telling her I was coming for this summer program at Edinburgh, and that she was the only person in the world who could help me make a big decision about my life, and could I possibly have a meeting with her. Her secretary wrote me back on this monogram, Monaco, Prince of Monaco, Grace Kelly, GG, Grace Grimaldi, stationery. Her Serene Highness Princess Grace would be happy to receive you in an audience at the palace in Monaco. Let us know when you finish your studies at Edinburgh, when it would be convenient for you to come to Monaco.
Oh my gosh. I can't even believe that happened.
I can't believe I wrote that letter. But I had a meeting with Grace Kelly in Monaco
No way.
in the palace, and she came sweeping in to the reception area where I had been led. I was a nervous wreck.
I bet.
I was so intimidated, I couldn't even open my mouth. But she was nearsighted and she had on sunglasses, and I know they were prescription. Anyway, she came in, Grace Kelly, with her secretary following, and sat down about 10 feet from me.
Oh my gosh.
But my big concern was whether I was supposed to curtsy to her.
Mm.
I had gone to Europe on the Queen Elizabeth,
Mhm.
And I had made friends with this girl from England. And she had said, when you meet Grace Kelly, you have to curtsy. And she taught me how to do it. But it's very awkward to try to curtsy. And I thought, oh my God, if I try to curtsy, I'll fall on the floor. Something horrible's going to happen. But I was so nervous, I didn't know if I should try. But Grace Kelly saved me. She came at me with her hand extended,
Mm.
letting me know I didn't have to curtsy, and took my hand and shook it. And
So
she,
what did you two talk about? I mean, that is one of the coolest stories I've heard on this entire That's Classic.
well, I literally couldn't open my mouth. And she said, I was very curious to know what you wanted to talk to me about. And, and I didn't say anything. I just kept looking at her. And she said, are you an actress? She said, well, are you studying to be an actress? I said, and she said, well, are you thinking about studying to be an actress? And I said, yes. And I finally found my voice. And I said that my dream was to become an actress, but perhaps it was unrealistic. And she said, I would never tell anyone not to pursue their dream because of an experience I once had in New York. She said a young man had just finished Yale Drama School and asked my advice about going to Hollywood. And after I talked to him a few minutes, I learned that he had a wife and a young son. And I advised him not to go because Hollywood is brutal.
Mhm.
She said it was Paul Newman.
Oh my gosh.
And we both laughed.
Oh, wow.
It was Paul Newman.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. And look, and he became the biggest.
The biggest.
Oh
Met
wow.
him once on the beach in Malibu Colony. And I was with a friend of mine, Diane Cannon.
Oh,
And Diane knew him from her marriage to Cary Grant. So she introduced me to him. And I wanted to say, Grace Kelly told me a very funny story about you, Paul. But I knew Diane would like it if I drew his attention to me, so I didn't say anything.
oh boy.
I didn't tell him the story.
Well, he must have been, I mean, he's one of those guys. I'm sorry, he must have been quite the stunning like guy to see. I mean, he just kind of exuded that stardom.
He did. And his blue eyes, oh, his blue eyes just jumped out at you.
Wow, wow, unbelievable. So what did so going back to Grace, because that may be one of the most fascinating things I've heard. When you were so you're one-on-one talking with her, what did she say that finally made you say, I'm gonna do this?
Oh, I had already said that to myself. But she said, first you need to study, and the best teachers are in New York. She was like a mentor to me.
Wow.
I was from a little town in Arkansas. What did I know about becoming an actress? In fact, I said to her, how does one become an actress? And
Mhm.
that's what she said. First, you have to study, and the best teachers are in New York. And so, and I said, were you happy with your career in New York and in Hollywood? And she said, well, I was happy, but I guess every actress wishes they could improve their performance.
Hmm.
She seemed to be a little insecure about her acting.
Hmm. Wow.
Anyway, she was very lovely to me. And I knew so much about her that when I went to New York, I moved into the Barbizon Hotel for Women because that's where she stayed when she first went to New York to study acting.
Mhm.
So I went there. And I was so insecure about taking an acting class. I really didn't think I had any talent. I was confident about some talents, but not about acting.
Unbelievable.
And 4 months passed, and I hadn't gotten up the courage to sign up for a class.
Oh my gosh.
And I had started attending Norman Vincent Peale's Marble Collegiate Church at 5th Avenue and 29th Street. He was the author of The Power of Positive Thinking.
Very famous book.
I had
Yes.
read his book, and I attended his church once in a while, often on Sunday morning. And one Sunday morning, I prayed that he would say something that would help me with my impasse, because I had come to New York to study acting, but I didn't have the courage to sign up for a class.
Wow.
And let me tell you what he said in his sermon that morning. He said, there's a law of human psychology that you cannot want anything that you're not capable of achieving. Well, I thought to myself, if want is the only important thing, I know how much I want it. I don't have to worry about anything else. I'm capable of achieving it, or I wouldn't want it.
Wow, that's fantastic. So did you go over right then and go to Strasbourg or Meisner?
The very next day, I signed up at Grace Kelly's school, the American Academy of Dramatic Arts, for a nighttime class. By then, in fact, my first audition for a job in New York was for an executive secretary at the Reader's Digest to a senior editor on Park Avenue at the Reader's Digest. So I had a real good job. And I went to night classes at the American Academy. And at the end of that semester, amazingly, I think it's amazing because my teacher, Max Fisher was his name, chose me to be his ingenue at his summer stock theater that summer. And I was so insecure, I thought, I guess no one else was available. I couldn't believe he would choose me, but he did. And in fact, I did 5 plays that summer, but I was an apprentice. It was my first summer as an apprentice at an equity theater. You had to be apprenticed 2 summers in order to become a member, a professional member of Actors Equity.
Right.
How you do, be a stage actress. So that was my first summer. And that summer, I don't even know how I found out about it, but I was practicing on my own for an audition before the New York Drama Critics. No, New York, there's very famous. I can't remember. They put on Broadway shows at that time.
Yeah.
And they were having an audition, and they were giving 3 scholarships to 3 young people to attend a full year at an acting school.
Wow.
I auditioned. I had to do a contemporary scene monologue, just a monologue, and a classic monologue. And I won a scholarship. That was another amazing happening.
My gosh.
And so the second year, I had free acting school all day long. I quit my Reader's Digest job. I worked as a typist at night. I was a very good typist. And then it was after that that I studied 2 years with Sandy Meisner, Grace's teacher, and then 2 years privately with Lee Strasberg. And then I auditioned for the Actors Studio. And I've told you the rest. I went to Hollywood.
I think, Beth, that is such a fascinating story. I cannot thank you enough for sharing that. I love it. Not only is that inspiring, but it is just wild to think of how all those things lined up. I just love it. I just think that's cool. And you know what? The irony is you felt like, oh, should I do this? I don't even know if I have talent. You are a tremendous actress. I have seen your work. It is really something. That is just a great story. I love it.
That's thanks to Sandy and Lee. They taught me a craft. And it was actually fortunate that I had not had an acting background at the University of Arkansas because I had no bad habits.
Right.
You know, I was like a piece of clay and mold. And because they were both the most brilliant teachers we've ever had in America, they had a craft that they could teach you so that you knew what to do. You weren't just trying to be a character. No, you knew how to prepare the emotion, find it in yourself so that you weren't just acting, you were living the character. That's what I learned from them. But thank you for the compliment.
Well, it's the truth, though. It is. And I have an acting background myself, so I know exactly what you're talking about. And I think I would agree with you. I think they are amongst the greatest. Hey, so let's talk about a few of your credits, because they kind of go all over the place, and it's quite amazing, you know, who you've worked with. What about Bonanza? Because I know you're on 2 episodes of that.
Oh, I had a wonderful experience on Bonanza. My first show on Bonanza, I was Little Joe's old girlfriend.
Oh, wow.
And I show up in, what was it called? Virginia City?
Yeah, I think that's right. Yep.
So I show up in Virginia City and I hear a voice behind me saying hello, or whatever he said to me. I turn around, it's Michael Landon.
Oh my gosh.
Who I'm in love with. I was in love with him, but we never got married because my father thought I was too young. And then we moved away from Virginia City. In the meantime, I've married someone who now is going to be a deputy sheriff in Virginia City. But I don't tell little Joe this. And it was like nothing, no time had passed. And we have a kissing scene.
You were kissing Michael Landon. Oh my gosh. I have heard, there are so many women out there that are going, no, you're kidding. How amazing.
But
I'm sure.
Let me tell you about the scene because it's very funny. So we have this exchange of dialogue, and then he kisses me, this passionate kiss. And when we finish, the director says, cut. And the director says to the cinematographer, did you get it? And the cinematographer says, yes. And Michael Landon says, I think we need to do the scene again. Now, he did that 4 times. We had that kissing scene 4 times.
I love that. I have a lot of Little House on the Prairie fans, by the way, that are subscribers to my channel. And I mean, obviously I've only heard great things in general about him.
Little House on the Prairie, I never did.
No, you didn't, but Michael Landon, that was that was also his show. And they love Michael Landon. So what was Michael like at that time?
Oh, he was great. He was fun. We laughed a lot. Every time he said, I think we need to do it again, the crew and I would laugh. We would all laugh. And then the director would say, okay, let's go again.
That's funny. And then what was your other episode on Bonanza?
Well, that's an interesting story if you want to hear it.
I do.
After the first season, I became good friends with the producer of the show, an elderly man named Dick Collins. And about every 6 weeks or so, Dick and I would have lunch and catch up on things. He was a lovely, lovely man. And one of our lunches, he said, this was like the next season. He said, we'd like to use you again this season, but there's no role for you in this season. He said, for example, next week we're filming a show and there's a role of a character, but she's beat down by her father-in-law. He literally knocks her around and she has to be very depressed. And I said, oh, I can be depressed. And he said, no, no, she can't be pretty. I said, I'm not pretty without makeup. And he said, no, no, you're not right at all for it. And I said, well, tell me more about it. And he said, oh, she's beat up. She's from a country town in Virginia. And I said, well, I'm from a little town in Arkansas. I can be from a little town in Virginia. He said, no, no, you're not at all right for the part. Well, I kept on. And finally, I think just to change the subject, said, at least let me audition for the director. And okay, he said, well, I took this very seriously. I went to the Salvation Army and I bought this dress that was 2 sizes too big for me. And I tore out the hem on one side so it would drag kind of close to the ground. And I put stains on the dress. And I pulled my hair back into a knot on the back of my neck. I wore no makeup. I put dirt under my fingernails. I wore flip-flops, and I put dirt under my toenails. And I got up early that morning and I prepared everything that made me depressed. I was so depressed. I went to the, I can laugh now, but I wasn't laughing then. I went to the Warner Brothers lot, to the Bonanza reception office. And when I walked, I'll never forget the face of the receptionist when I walked into her office. She thought I was a homeless person who had wandered onto the lot by mistake.
Oh my God.
She could not believe when I said, she said, may I help you? In this very compassionate way, may I help you? I said, well, I'm here for my audition. I'm Beth Brickell. She didn't say a word. She couldn't believe it. She went into the other room and led me in, and the men, there were like 3 or 4 men. No one said a word. And I came in and I auditioned and I got the part.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Wow. I love the tenacity.
And
Whoa.
that was Dilsey. It's the only role I ever got without my agents. I had the best agents in Hollywood, and they kept me working. And they formed CAA, wanted me to come with them. By then, I had decided I wanted to be a director. Anyway, I did Dilsey, and I got to know another lovely, lovely person, Dan Blocker.
Yeah.
Most of my scenes were with Dan on that Bonanza episode. And Jeff Corey was my mean father-in-law who slapped me around. And I took that character and that show very, very seriously. I told the makeup man, I don't want any makeup. I told the hairdresser, make me look as disheveled as you can. And I really wanted to live up to what Dick Collins wanted for the role, because he'd been so kind to let me audition when he didn't think I was right for the role. I mean, I had just played Little Joe's girlfriend, and they cast someone who they thought was very pretty. And now I'm wanting to play this beat up Southerner from Virginia who, anyway, it worked out very well.
You did it. What was Dan Blocker like, by the way?
Oh, such a lovely person. Very, very kind and a humble person. Nothing about him was, oh, I'm a big star on Bonanza. He was just a regular guy. But more than that, he was very like a big bear that wants to hug you, like Drum.
Right, right.
Like Drum wanted to hug me.
Oh my gosh. By the way, you mentioned Jeff Corey. Now, I'm just trying to think of this. but wasn't he also in like East of Eden or one of those? I thought he
But
was,
it wasn't in East of Eden.
but he was in one of those, like, yeah, like one. I thought he was in one of the ones with James Dean. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm thinking, no, you know what? I think I'm thinking of Dennis Hopper. Yeah, no, no, no. You're right. But Jeff Corey, because I know he taught acting for a long time out in LA too.
Yeah, he was respected as a teacher.
Yeah, yeah. I just can't remember what the tie-in there was. But anyway, that's all good. So you have so many cool things on here. One I saw was Brock's Last Case with Richard Widmark and well, Will Geer, Pat Morita. Do you remember anything about that?
I remember a lot about that.
Well,
That,
yeah,
was,
tell me, what do you got?
that was a pilot. And my agents put me up got me the role. And I never auditioned for anything except that role for Dilsey because my agents were so good. They just got me the next role.
Wow.
And also had a brilliant PR firm. And they, starting with Gentle Ben, they got me so much publicity.
Hmm.
It helped my agents get me more work. Anyway, what were we talking about?
Brock's Last Case.
Brock's like, so
Last Case, yeah.
so I kept waiting for the script. I didn't get it until 3 days before. Oh, I had met with Richard Widmark.
Oh.
And he chose me. He made the decision that I would be his co-star on this was going to be his first television series.
Was he intimidating when you met him? Like he's a pretty intense actor.
No, he was very friendly, and I was very friendly with him. Anyway, so because I didn't have a good relationship with the producer on Gentle Ben, it was very hard for me to get out of Gentle Ben. I went all the way up to the president of CBS asking to get out. And he said, "We can't let you out. You're what's known on my side of the desk as a television likable." I said, "What's that?" He said, "We've never gotten a negative letter from an audience member about you." He said, "That's very rare. I can't let you out of Gentle Ben." I said, I can't go back. I told him some things that had happened with the producer. And then I said to him, "I even have to provide my own wardrobe because Ivan Torres told me that he needed my wardrobe budget for Cowboys in Africa, another show that he was doing for ABC. You should have seen, Jim Wood, I think was his name. You should have seen his face." And he canceled that show 3 days later.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
He was not going to let me out because of my terrible experiences. I said, the editor, who's a friend of mine, even tells me that every time he shows a rough cut to the producer says, "Take her out of the scene." And the editor has to convince him that I'm necessary for the scene. He said, "Well, then take her down. Don't give her any close-ups." So I told all of this to the president of CBS. He didn't care about any of that. But when I told him that Ivan Torres said that he needed my wardrobe budget for Cowboys in Africa, his face, it was like, I think he must have suspected something was going on with budgets, because that's all it took. And that show was over in 3 days.
Wow, that's amazing. Jeez. So then you get out and you're able to work with Richard Widmark.
So I get the script for the show, and it's actually a fabulous role for my character. She's a lawyer. She drives a Jaguar. She owns her own ranch. She raises quarter horses and rides horses, which I love. I love riding horses. and she's an archer. My dad was a champion archer when I was a little thing.
Oh,
He
how bizarre is that?
he made me a little child's bow and would take me to tournaments with him. And so I knew archery. In fact, when they shot, I had a scene where my character is shooting target practice, and Richard Widmark is watching. And because I could hit the bullseye every time, the director had the camera on me from the side, putting the arrow on my bow. And then the camera moves around behind me and zooms with the arrow into the bullseye.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. That is just amazing. Talk about like how that came back into your life. Wow.
But I didn't want to have another 7-year contract. And they wanted me to sign a 7-year contract. And I knew how hard it was to get out of Gentle Bend.
Mhm.
And I didn't want to get tied up in another 7-year situation that I might not be happy in. So I refused to do the series. And it was too late for them to recast the pilot.
Hmm.
In fact, I didn't think about anybody else, and I should have. 6 a.m. my first morning, going to the set at Universal. The casting director, who had cast me in a lot of shows over the years, actually met me at the gate at Universal at 6 a.m.
My gosh.
How could you do this to me?
Oh.
I had no idea how that affected other people.
Mhm.
I said to him, well, I didn't get the script until 3 days ago, and I couldn't make a decision until I read the script. But it really wasn't the script, it was the fact of the 7-year commitment. I
Mhm.
just couldn't get myself into another. In fact, after that, Universal offered me a 7-year contract for maybe movies and television. And I just couldn't get into that situation again, knowing how difficult it had been for me on Gentle Ben with the producer.
Boy, that really is something. Wow. Did what was it like when you were on set with Richard Widmark? What was he like as an actor?
Well, as you know, I'm a method actress.
Mhm.
And my character is very standoffish in the pilot. So I wasn't friendly to Richard Widmark. And I think he took it personally because I was standoffish, because my character was standoffish.
Oh,
I
geez.
had been so friendly when we met, but now that wasn't my character. So he was very silent on the script, on the set. Someone told me he was deaf in one ear. He was
Hmm.
hard of hearing, and that people who are hard of hearing can be paranoid. So the crew people thought he was just paranoid. He was very, very quiet. He didn't relate to anybody.
Very interesting. And another big one that I saw on your list of credits is Posse with Kirk Douglas, Bruce Dern, Bo Hopkins. In fact, Kirk directed that, I believe, as well.
Yes, he did. You mentioned Bo Hopkins. Bo and I did my first movie together
Oh, really?
called The Only Way Home. He rapes me,
Oh,
and I fall in love with him, and we hide out in this rural property. And when the police and my husband, I'm married, surround our hideout, I shoot him in the head and kill him, which is
geez.
one which was one of 3 movies I did. One was worse than the other. That became a moral conflict for me. It's one reason I decided I'd like to be a director and choose my own material. But Bo had a terrible accident. No, I'm thinking of Jim Stacey, not Bo Hopkins.
Hmm. Hmm.
Stacey was in Posse, And Jim had been my husband on a Gunsmoke.
Hmm.
A darling boy, very handsome, very cute guy. And he had had a motorcycle accident and lost an arm and a leg.
Oh my gosh.
They brought him onto Posse in a character. And that was the first time I had seen Jim since our experience on Gunsmoke.
Hmm. Well, that had to be hard.
Yeah, that was hard. It was hard for everybody.
Hmm.
Anyway, Kirk taught me something I didn't know about movies. He wouldn't let me move a muscle when I talked. He said, and I've found out since then, they taught this to all of those old stars in the Hollywood system, that if you don't move your face, like emotionally, it's more powerful. And he kept correcting me. He said, you moved your eyebrow, you moved your nose, whatever, you moved your head. He kept stopping me. And when I saw the film, the screening, I realized he was absolutely right about that. And I never had known such a thing.
Me neither. Wow. Did you continue to do that then when you would go forward from there on other projects?
By then, that was my last movie.
Oh, I see.
I was accepted as a director fellow at the American Film Institute. That was my last show. No, I did one more movie. I'm wrong. I did something horrible called The Death Game. My agents called me and said, they want you for The Death Game, but don't read the screenplay or you won't do it. He said, you're only in the first scene and the last scene. You take your children on a vacation, and when I'm gone, I found this out later. I did what he said. I didn't read the script. He called me on set when we were shooting Posse in Tucson. He said, you won't do it, but he said, this would be good for your career if you go out of one motion picture into another one. So I said, okay. Well, then I see the screening. When I'm gone, my character, these two girls knock on the door and ask to use the telephone. They end up, my husband lets them come in to use the telephone. They end up killing him and floating him in as a fish tank. It was so gruesome that the MPAA gave the movie an X rating.
Oh, geez.
When I saw that screening, I said, that's it. That was my last movie. I said, that's it. I can't do this anymore. I've got to have control over what I lend my creative energies to.
Very interesting. I love the strength that you had there. There were some other ones in there, by the way, that I like. I'm curious about this. You're also one of the few people I've ever had on here that was on the Green Hornet. Do you have any memories of the Green Hornet with Van Williams and Bruce Lee?
Sure. In fact, my biggest memory is what we experienced together a few weekends ago at that Hollywood convention thing.
Yeah.
When celebrities were there and hundreds of people came wanting our autographs. Well, these two guys came. I didn't know this, but there's a Green Hornet International Internet, I guess, group.
Yeah.
The Green Hornet group. They know everything. They even knew my character's name, Dr. Hannah Thomas. I didn't remember it. They had me sign 20 photos for people who are going to be all internationally. I had to write for Michael. And then after I signed my name, they wanted me to write my character's name, Dr. Hannah Thomas.
Wow.
And for Charlie, for Juan, all of these different.
Oh my gosh.
Then the same guys had models of the Green Hornet's car. I didn't even know he had a car.
Yeah, the black car. Yeah.
And they even told me the name of it. It was called the Black Beauty, they told me. I didn't know that. They knew more about Green Hornet than I did. But as far as acting with Van Williams and Bruce Lee became very famous after that. This was early on in his career. And he was very shy. And when I worked with him, he was over in the background on the set, very inauspicious, not calling attention to himself at all. But later on, he became the big star. That was Green Hornet was one of the first shows I did in Hollywood. So I didn't know anything. When I came to Hollywood, I told you how good my agents were. Roland Perkins got me 5 lines in The Girl from Uncle, shooting at MGM 5 days after 1 week after I arrived in LA.
Wow. Stephanie Powers.
Now that was an interesting experience because I had just come to LA. I didn't know my way around. And I had a 6 a.m. or I guess it was a 6 a.m. makeup call at MGM. It was dark. And I was on Washington Boulevard trying to find the gate to MGM. It's not on Washington Boulevard. And I accidentally ran a red light and a policeman stopped me. And I said, "Oh, I'm so sorry." I said, "It's my first acting job. And I can't find the gate to MGM." And he said, "Follow me." He didn't give me a ticket and he led me around the corner to the gate to MGM.
Wow. Wow.
Isn't that a nice story about a policeman?
That is a wonderful story.
That's my first acting job. I'm so afraid of being late. I can't find my way onto the lot. And he said, follow me. And he got in his car.
Wow. What was Stephanie Powers like then? My gosh, she was pretty young herself.
Well, I only had 5 lines.
Oh,
And
right.
I was a stewardess on an airplane, so I didn't have much contact with her. A month later, Roland got me my first starring role on The Man from Uncle.
Oh, really?
It's also at MGM. And then 7 months later, I was on Gentle Ben. So things happened very quickly for me. Ask me about Hawaii Five-0.
All right, you got it. Yeah, tell me about Jack Lord. And by the way, I've seen that episode. You were awesome in that.
2 episodes.
2 episodes. Wow. Well, I saw one of them. I saw the one where he's like right there, like sitting in a chair, and you're like flirting with him. I thought it was awesome.
Well, that was real interesting. But I'll tell you, the first Hawaii Five-0 I did, I have a gun and I'm pointing. There's a real interesting scene with the guy who ends up killing me, but I've got a gun on him and I'm going to kill him. Have a real interesting exchange if you ever have a chance to see that episode. And then
is that the one where you're in like a parking garage with the guy?
Maybe.
And you have a gun on him and he's like kind of a gangster type, or he's like the boss. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do know that, and that was terrific. Yeah, I know it.
Well, the next season I came back with the best role I ever had on television. And that's the one you're talking about when I'm flirting with him. That's an interesting story because the crew had told me the whole show is me and Jack Lord. Now, Jack Lord was more than just the star. He was also the producer on that show.
Yep.
And the crew told me Jack Lord had never smiled as his character. And so I took it, I thought, I'm going to make him smile. And the scene you're talking about, I got down on my knees and I'm flirting with him and I'm saying, he's got all the lines. And he's saying, you know, he's reading for something. It says this, it says that, it says the other. I said, oh, it does. And I'm just flirting with him. And I kept trying to make him smile. That was my motivation. And finally, he wouldn't smile. And I took my hand. I'm down on my knees.
Mm-hmm.
I take my hand. I start going up on his leg under his pants. And he cracks this little tiny smile. But there's another funny thing. At the end of that episode, I've killed my boyfriend. And I've framed another boyfriend who's in prison. And he gets out of prison. And Jack Lord's character tapes me confessing, trying to convince the guy who came out of prison and is so resentful, and I'm afraid he's going to kill me. He's threatening to kill me because I framed him and put him in prison. And Jack Lord is taping my confession. I don't know this. So then it's the end of the episode, and he plays back some of the recording of me confessing. And the police come in, lead me out. And as they lead me out, there's a picture of the boyfriend framed who I killed. And I pick up the frame and I sling it at my line is cop, just cop. But I said, cop. And now they have to have a reverse shot on Jack Lord with this frame hitting him because I really threw it hard.
Oh.
Well, they come around for his close-up and the prop guy throws the frame at Jack Lord, and he's terrified of hitting Jack Lord, who's the producer and the star of the show, and the frame keeps falling on the floor. It doesn't even reach him. After about 3 or 4 times, I say, let me throw it. And Jack says, yeah, let Beth throw it. And I mean, I threw that at him, and he had to throw his arm up. If you'll watch that episode again, it really hit him hard. Wow. And the whole crew, you could hear a pin drop. This was the star of the show. And then Jack laughed. And so then everybody could laugh. But that was an interesting experience.
Yeah.
Prop man wouldn't throw it hard.
That's funny. I've heard he was the show. Yeah, I mean, he was the guy. Oh, that's funny. I had someone else on, and I'm blanking who it was. It was another actress. Oh, I had her in my. Oh, it might have been Tina Cole. I might be getting this wrong, so don't take me verbatim on this. But she was on Hawaii Five-0, and she said that Jack was very particular about his hair. That was the one thing. It always had to look just right. Did he pretty much, was he always looking pretty good?
Yeah, but Dennis Weaver was very particular about his hair. In fact, that first shot that I described to you, when we're on the airboat, I kind of messed up Dennis's hair. And boy, he stopped me in a second. He said, don't ever touch my hair. I never did. Well, I guess men of a certain age are very particular about their hair.
Oh, man. Well, there were, I mean, you had a lot of them, but one I noticed was Ironsides with Raymond Burr. Any memories from that?
I don't think I had much interaction with him. I don't remember. A man that I did have some interaction with was Robert Young on Marcus Wellby M.D.
Yes, I saw that too. That was a tremendous scene you did with that. Talk about emotional, man.
Yeah. My husband was, what's his name? He was married to Betty Davis, Gary Merrill.
Mm.
And he's my elderly husband on that show. And he comes down with cancer. That emotional scene you're talking about was me with Robert Young
Mhm.
learning for sure that he has cancer and asking, is it serious? Can we try a new technique or a new drug or something? But he was a lovely man, Robert Young. But everyone was very nice to me. I was so young and I was very naive and I was just the luckiest person in the world.
Was
I'm
he was Robert Young? I mean, obviously he was a huge star before he was ever on Marcus Welby. Did he have that presence or not?
Oh, he was kind, very kind man, very gentle man. Of course, that was also his character.
Mm-hmm.
I had great experiences with all the actors I worked with.
Wow.
Burt Reynolds, I worked with Burt. Burt did an episode of Gentle Ben with us. And then I got cast in Dan August, which was a television series he did, I think, for
Mm-hmm.
only one season, I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm.
And then Burt and I dated after that. But talk about a gorgeous guy and
Oh.
a good kisser. He was a better kisser than Michael Landon.
How long did you date Bert?
No, just a couple of times.
Just a couple of times. He was always an idol of mine. I mean, he was a football player, or he was a guy's guy, all that stuff.
Yeah, all his big movie career was after that. But
Wow.
when he did Dan August and Gentle Ben, he was not the big star he became.
Did he have a natural charisma about him, though?
Oh, sure. Yes. Burt
Wow.
Reynolds. Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. Did was there ever anyone else that you worked with in your career that it was like one of those moments, kind of like when you met Grace Kelly, where it's like when you actually were there with him, it was like, wow, I'm actually acting with, you know.
No one I ever acted with, but I had that feeling with Paul Newman when
Mm.
I met Paul Newman. It was like, I mean, how can you not say, my God, this is Paul Newman I'm talking to?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I have to admit, I think I would have that feeling just because he's such an icon, you know. Well, Beth, you have talked about so much and it's been so wonderful. I've enjoyed every minute of it. You know, I really appreciate you. And is there anything that you are involved in on any level from a charitable standpoint? I ask this of everyone that's on the show, by the way. Anything that you would want to, you know, let people know about, or anything that you're like, well, I like this organization, or I'm involved with this, anything like that.
My focus right now is on the Maude Crawford mystery.
Hmm.
I mentioned that I had done an investigation and my dad thought I should research and investigate William Brickell.
Yes.
Well, my agent, when I became a director, I finished the American Film Institute, graduated with an MFA in film directing, and I had done a couple of short films that won a lot of awards.
Hmm.
And I signed with an agent at CAA, and he asked me, what do you want to do next? And I told him the little bit I knew about an unsolved mystery in my hometown back in Arkansas, small town, Camden, Arkansas. And he said, that would make a good movie. Write a screenplay about it. So I go back to Camden and I learned I started asking questions. This was 30 years after the happening. Maude Crawford was the only woman lawyer in Camden, and she was a very important community leader, the first woman elected to the city council. 4 different times. She served 8 years on the city council, and she disappeared mysteriously from her home one Saturday night when it was raining and foggy. The police declared the case at a dead end after 4 days, and the state police detective was taken off the case in 2 weeks. And nothing more had happened. And I learned about this when I went back, that the police had never investigated the mystery properly. What happened to Maude Crawford? The judge over the years had declared her officially murdered, dead. But no one knew anything about it. So it happened that all of the police, the original police officers, were still alive at the time, including that state police detective. And they were willing to tell me things that had not been made public in the original investigation. And I uncovered the motive for murder.
Oh, wow.
The reason it was never investigated, all of the evidence. The state police detective told me, I found a clue, because in the original investigation, they said no clue, no trace, no motive, no body, nothing was found. And the police detective said, I found the clue. I found evidence of the motive. I took all of my information, went to Little Rock, and told the head of the Criminal Investigative Division of the state police, all evidence points to Mike Berg having had Maude Crawford murdered. Now, Mike Berg was the wealthiest man in Camden, and he was also, more importantly, an Arkansas State Police Commissioner. There are only 7 in the state. They're over all policing in the state. And that's why when everyone saw the evidence, all of the police saw that the evidence pointed to State Police Commissioner, they dropped the case. And I wrote an 18-article investigative series about my findings. I had that newspaper background I mentioned. And the state newspaper printed my articles, 18 articles, on the front page of the state newspaper.
Oh my gosh.
It was a very respected newspaper. It won the Pulitzer Prize on something else.
Oh my gosh.
Anyway, they printed it on the front page. And did you turn back on the video?
No, it wasn't that. I had an alarm go off on my phone.
I thought it was off, and I'm telling this story and I'm not even being on camera.
No, literally, my alarm went off on my phone. I'm like, what are you doing?
The actress in me saying, what's he doing? I'm not on camera, I'm telling the story. And who's listening? Anyway.
Yeah.
My findings were very sensational, you could imagine. And over the years, I've learned more. So many people track me down on the internet in recent years, asking how they can read those Gazette articles, the Arkansas Gazette. So I published a book of my articles called The Disappearance of Maude Crawford.
Wow.
And also, I've learned more information. And finally, I've learned the final piece of the puzzle of what they did with her body.
Oh my gosh.
And now, finally, I can write the screenplays I've written 2 screenplays. Mike and Maude is what led up to her disappearance. And then Black Cadillac is about my investigation.
Fascinating.
So I'm trying to do something with those 2 screenplays now. I'm very focused on that.
Okay, I understand. I do. Well, I wish you the best of luck with that. I find that a fascinating story, like everything else you told me about today. My gosh, been a lot of fun with you, Beth.
Well, John, it's been a lot of fun with you. Who doesn't like to talk about themselves?
Yeah, exactly. I hear you. Well, that was really fun, and I enjoyed every minute of it. Thanks for being part of this, and I hope that your fans out there end up, going and getting the books and going back and watching your performances, because there are some great ones out there.
4 books on the Maude Crawford mystery, and they're on Amazon. So all you have to do is put in Maude Crawford, Crawford, on Amazon, and my 4 books come up.
Okay. All right. I'm glad you said that so that everybody can go. And by the way, if they want an autograph or anything like that, is there a website or anywhere for someone to go?
No, but almost every week I get, somehow, I don't know how, people print out photos. I guess they find them online.
Yeah.
Send them to me for my autograph, and I give them my autograph.
Wow. That's pretty darn cool, Beth. I like it. All right. Well, thanks a bunch for being on. I appreciate you.
Thanks for inviting me.
You got it. My pleasure. Well, thanks for listening, and definitely hit the subscription button. As well, hit the notification bell so that you'll know when my next episode is released. In addition, check out some of my other interviews if you haven't had a chance. Eric Roberts, Henry Winkler, Jerry Mathers from Leave It to Beaver. There's so many. Enjoy.